When you own physical gold, physical silver, it's in your possession. You actually own the asset itself. Sound money, which is sound because it's above all central bankers and government's ability to inflate away. But then they transitioned us and got us used to, instead of holding our sound money outside of the banking system, claims against it. This is a gold certificate. So I could walk into the bank with this and walk out with that. So we went from ownership to a claim. And then we went to, this crap, which is just debt. That's what it is. It's a note. A note is a debt instrument. And so now we have bank accounts. That's a promise to pay. That's permission, because if they don't want you in your bank account, I'm sure people have had the experience, they go to use their debit cards or their credit cards and boom, it's declined. That's a permission-based system. Going into the new one that they make look like gold because they want you to think it's the same as this, it is not. But going into the new digital system, that puts us in control, right? So just to reiterate, we went from ownership of our money to permission to access debt to full control of everything you do. And people all around the world need to ask if that's okay with them. And if it is, don't do anything about it. If it's not, then join the sound money movement. And all you have to do that is buy physical gold and silver. Because if we could get 3% of the global population to hold money, sound money, outside of the banking system, I believe we can have a voice. And when I say redeemable, I mean Zimbabwe has the Zim gold. It doesn't mean anything. They're facing very high inflation and overnight resets and all of that because it's not redeemable. It must be redeemable, meaning if I don't like what I see the politicians or central bankers doing, I could say, give me my gold. This is what gives the public their power. When you hold it and you own it, outside of the system. So that's a huge focus for us, and education, so people really understand, because we've been taught a whole bunch of lies that we believe, and they are not in our best interest.
Ancient philosophy once asked whether a ship remains the same ship after every plank's been swapped out. Apply that to money. The monetary system of 2026 shares a name with the one from a century ago, but almost nothing else. Gold coins turned into gold certificates, certificates turned into Federal Reserve notes, and notes eventually became digits in a database. Each change felt minor at the time, but together they add up to a currency now backed by nothing but confidence. Confidence that's being tested more and more, given that the dollar's purchasing power has fallen to roughly 3 cents of what it was worth in 1913.
In a piece of paper, because they need to do away with the paper, because the paper does still create restrictions for them. Yeah. I can keep this out of the system and it's invisible. When everything is digital, and by the way, I mean, the U.S. does it better than any other country. I'm going to say that. Pull out a bill or look at a bill and it says Federal Reserve note. Everybody knows that their money are actually notes, but what they don't do is connect the dots. What is a note? It is a debt instrument. So you are working for somebody else's debt, corporate debt. That's disgusting. That's why they can inflate the value away, because it really has no value. It's debt.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, these are used 36 different places use in the globe, around the globe, use physical silver. 33 use physical gold. Broadest base of demand. That's why they inflate it away.
It's weird because, like, in the States, they call it a note, but they call it a dollar bill. And in the UK, we've got the Bank of England, and they call it a banknote here. They don't call it a pound bill. But it used to be bigger than this note, but underneath where it says Bank of England, it says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of 20 pounds. That used to be 20 gold sovereigns because that was a pound. I've called the Bank of England before, and I asked, what do you pay the notes in? And they said, oh, that's just to for you. If the note is damaged, we can give you a new one. And I said, why don't you write that? If the note is damaged, we'll give you a new one. So yeah, they've been trying to deceive the public. But one question I have, because the argument of convenience is there, like the digital currency backed by gold, or a token issued privately backed by gold. Is that the way forward, or would you? I wouldn't trust it 100% because they can always stop the redemption. That's what they've done in the past.
You're exactly right. And when they say backed by gold, Zimbabwe dollar is now backed by 40% gold, but you cannot redeem it. You can't say, okay, Zimbabwe central bank, send me my gold. So therefore, unless it is redeemable, because when it's redeemable, you have the tools to hold the central banks and the government accountable. Because if you don't like what they're doing, you pull the gold out. So backed, and think about it. We've got all these asset-backed securities that are coming out. Are they really asset-backed? Can you convert the tokens into it? Because if you cannot, how do you hold anybody's toes to the fire? And if it's also redeemable, okay, I'm holding money outside of the banking system. Right? This is why I do believe everybody needs to become their own central banker and hold sound money outside of the banking system. This is what gives us power. And if we have enough people that do it, I mean, there's 1% that's ruling the 99%. All we need is 3%.
Yeah.
While retail attention stayed fixed on crypto and stocks, central banks were doing something hard to ignore, buying gold at a pace not seen since the late 1960s. In 2025 alone, official institutions added well over 1,000 tons to their reserves, and gold prices roughly doubled within a year, touching an all-time high above $5,500 an ounce in January 2026. Poland, Kazakhstan, China, and more than 20 other countries kept expanding their holdings even as prices climbed, a sign, analysts say, that sovereign buyers aren't chasing profit so much as hedging against a currency system they no longer fully trust.
It's interesting you mentioned that 1% because I'm going to share this with you and the viewers. I saw a post today on X. And I wasn't surprised, of course, but it says here, the wealthiest 1% of U.S. earners now own 50.1% of U.S. equity and mutual fund holdings. To put this into perspective, their ownership stood at 40.1 in 1990 and 39.6 in 2001. And you can see here the top 10%, they own 87.4, and the bottom 90, they only own like just under 13%. So I know that you started looking into markets and into currencies in 1964. Your uncle, didn't he? He got you into gold, right?
He was a high-end antique dealer.
Yeah.
So he would go into homes and he would buy stuff. And then a lot of his very wealthy clients would go, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with these gold coins. So at that point, spot was fixed at $35 an ounce. So he bought them and he accumulated them. And in fact, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that is the second installment on the new piece that he wrote. Because 1964, it was illegal at that time for a U.S. citizen to hold more than 5 ounces of gold any other way than pre-1933 coins. And my parents and I were at his house one day, and he goes, come here, I want to show you something. And so we went in a back bedroom, and he had 2 tall floor safes. And he opened the doors, And he said to me, well, he said to us, if anything should ever happen to me, your Aunt Bertie will be well taken care of for the rest of her life because of what's in these safes. So naturally, I looked, and it was packed with gold coins. You couldn't fit one more in. So if I was 10 years old at that time. I didn't really fully understand what I was seeing, but I never, ever, ever forgot those words. And I think that I've come to realize, especially working on this piece, that, I was very close to him. And he taught me so much. And I thought it was really about antiques, but it's really about preparation and love and caring for the people that are going to be left behind. And honestly, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. Someday, maybe I'll even be a great grandmother. And so I feel like we have an obligation, just like he did with me, that he passed down his knowledge and his understanding and the way that he prepared for those people that he loved. And I didn't even really realize it, but I do the same thing. And I think that's critically important. What kind of world do we want to leave our children? We're like 3,000 in many cases.
Yeah.
Jamie Dimon, do you think that is just, 300 times more than the average base wage earner at Chase Bank? I was a banker there for a while, and I was also a divorced woman with 2 babies I had to raise. Could I do it on a banker's wage? Well, maybe if I was up at Jamie Dimon's level, but I wasn't at that time. That's when I became a stockbroker, and that's actually why I became a stockbroker.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I thought. That's not actually really true. I was groomed for this moment in time, but at least that was the reason back then. But yes, now it's ridiculous. And it's these notes that enable that, because we have no way to control what's happening because we don't have any redeemable gold in our system.
Yeah, that's what Howard Buffett, Warren Buffett's dad, wrote about in 1948.
Yes, he did.
Gold and Economic Freedom, I think it was called. But I wanted to move on to current economic climate.
Please.
Yeah, because a couple of weeks, not weeks, but a couple of months ago or so, you had a video about the Great Depression and the largest wealth transfer in history happening again, ? So what I'd like to ask you is, where are we now in terms of what you said a couple of months ago?
Well, when I finish creating something, it kind of goes out of my head. So, but I definitely am a student of that period of time. And when you look at what we were just talking about, the wealth of the few compared to the wealth of the many, we certainly saw that back in 1929. That was the kickoff to this whole grand experiment and changing the monetary system. And, I've come up with a mentally visual tool for people to think about it. And it's the thought process of the ship of Theseus. And that is very simple. It's a 2,000-year-old thought experiment. And they ask, if you change a ship one plank at a time, is it still the same ship? And so when you look at this monetary system going back to the 1920s with this big kickoff, what they do is they change the monetary planks around us slowly enough that we don't notice. But the wealth and everything was changing. So back in the 20s, that's when corporate debt, and I have all the proof. I'm happy to send this to you. I could even give you I modified it so that it was more clear to see. But from a 1964 government report on how private corporate debt was actually turned into Federal Reserve notes. And, we started out with this, and this is where they come together. So we started with this, and then we went to the claim against it. I'm going to show you both of these. And the Federal Reserve note. For 20 years, all three of them were out in the economy at the same face value, $20. All these three things that I'm holding in my hand are $20. And so people got used to thinking that they were just the same. And so when they took these two away and just left us with the corporate debt for us to perceive as money, it's not, it's currency.
Governments now frame the next step as basically inevitable: central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. As of 2026, over 130 countries are either researching or piloting one. China's ECNY has already processed more than 16 trillion yuan, and the Eurozone is nearing a decision on whether to launch a digital euro. Supporters call it modernization, faster payments, lower costs, greater financial inclusion. Critics push back, arguing that a fully traceable, programmable currency issued directly by a central bank could allow spending limits, expiration dates, or restrictions to be imposed with a single keystroke, turning money into something closer to a permission slip than actual property.
But we perceive it as money because it was attached to these other things: real money, a claim on money, and this debt. So look at where we are today. You and I have known each other for a lot of years. And so we've had this conversation over the years about 2008 when the system died. And I do not think that it was a coincidence that Bitcoin, and this is just my physical representation of something that does not exist, Bitcoin was born in January of 2009. And I mean, sorry, but look at the cryptocurrencies. They're all depicted in the stable coins. They're all depicted as gold, platinum, or silver, so that they're trying to manage your perception, and then they allow things to run. Right? So the roaring 20s, who questioned it? Everybody felt richer because there was so much more of this crap sloshing around in the system for the normal person. Well, what happened with cryptocurrencies? They were sold to us as being outside of the system. But I have a really good therapist for those people that think that it's still outside of the system, when they built all of this infrastructure around it. And even in this crypto winter, I mean, investors seem to be turning away, but oh, no, 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 no. The new rails to the new system are being put in place around us. Bitcoin was about getting us comfortable, just like this Federal Reserve note that looked just like this claim on the asset. It is the same exact methodology, just like it was in the 70s when they took us completely off the gold standard. And they had to, because in 1960, foreign claims against US gold went negative. There was a run on the dollar during that period of time. And look, whenever a government goes up against a promise that gets discovered, right, or the lie that gets discovered, they have two choices. They can either honor the promise, which means they could have given away more of US gold in 71 instead of taking us off the gold standard, or they could change the rules. And 100%, well, I can't say that actually, because I haven't done a deep enough study. But I can tell you during this period of time that we're talking about, when that happened for the public, they changed the rules. When it happened for the world, they changed the rules. They didn't honor the promises. And what are the promises today? To give you more debt like you were talking about? Right? I mean,
yeah.
we better take our power back.
I guess in 1971, the other thing they could have done is they could have raised interest rates to stop the outflow of gold from the U.S., but they didn't want to do that. Politicians never want higher rates. So what you're saying is that, like in the 20s, they're preparing us for a rug pull into a Great Depression, and then they'll try to bring in this digital currency, which they say it will replace fiat currency, but it will still be fiat currency because there will be no backing to it.
But aside from that, we're going from permission. See, right now you can hold, and I recommend everybody does this, excuse me. You can hold cash outside of the system and it's invisible to the system and the banks don't make any money off of it, right? And so I can go to a store, not any store anymore, but I can go to most any store and I still use cash for my transactions. But once we go to a fully digital system, wait, what?
Yeah, there's no, they have control of you 100%. Yeah.
Exactly. So people really need to understand that we went from ownership of our money to permission to use debt as money.